So as all of us know, and all the members of the press who are here know as well, we are gathered here because 2 weeks ago at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, an unspeakable act of mass violence took the lives of 19 children and 2 of their teachers. I know I speak for all of us, and I think I speak for everyone in the country, saying our hearts are broken by what happened in Uvalde. There is nothing that we can do that can undo the pain borne both by the survivors, families of the victims, and the community and the country. But the independence and transparency and expertise of the Justice Department can go a long way toward assessing what happened in Uvalde with respect to the law enforcement response and to giving guidance for the future. And that's what we're here for today. The Justice Department is undertaking a critical incident review of the law enforcement response that day at the request of the Uvalde mayor. The review will be comprehensive, it will be transparent, and it will be independent. We will be assessing what happened that day. We will be doing site visits at the school. We will be conducting interviews of an extremely wide variety of stakeholders, witnesses, families, law enforcement, government officials, school officials, and we will be reviewing the resources that were made available after in the aftermath. The review will culminate in a final report, which will include our findings and recommendations, and it will be made public. The department's COPS office is leading the review. Our director, Rob Chapman, and our senior counselor, Shanetta Cutler, will be leading the team. And now I will be happy to introduce to you the team who will be doing the investigation. Chief Rick Brazil, who served as chief of the Sacramento Police Department and lead investigator on a number of critical incident reviews. Deputy Chief Gene Dysinger, who served as Deputy Chief of Police and Director of Threat Management for Virginia Tech, where he was recruited following the mass shooting there in 2007. Deputy Chief Frank Fernandez is a former chief of police and police practices expert for the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division since 2008. Albert Guarnieri, who is on the screen, who is joining us remotely. He currently serves with the FBI as the unit chief of the Violence Reduction Unit in the Office of Partner Engagement. He oversees the FBI's program that has trained over 110,000 law enforcement officers in active shooter preparation and response. Major Mark Lomax served for over 27 years with the Pennsylvania State Police, led national efforts to strengthen law enforcement tactical response as executive director for the National Tactical Officers Association, and as a manager for the IACP Center for Police Leadership and Training. Laura McElroy, who is also joining us remotely, is a communications strategist who has worked as a civilian police executive dedicated to bridging the gap between officers and the communities they serve. Sheriff John Mina led the Orlando Police Department through the mass shooting at the Pulse nightclub in 2016. Dr. April Naturel is a traumatic stress specialist who led one of the World Trade Center Health Program's outreach and education programs and was the architect of the behavioral health response to the Boston Marathon bombing. Finally, Chief Kristen Zeman led the Aurora Police Department through the mass shooting at a movie theater in 2012. As I said, nothing that these folks can do can undo the terrible tragedy that occurred and that we are just heartbroken about, but we can assess what happened and we can make recommendations for the future. I would also say that as we conduct this review, the Justice Department stands ready to participate, to support the bipartisan gun safety negotiations that are going on in Congress right now in any way that's possible. I think now we'll take a few questions. Yes.
If I may.
Of course.
Given the misstatements, how concerned are you about the lack of transparency so far down in Uvalde? And will this review have the tools it needs in case people decide that they do not want to cooperate?
So as I said, we've been invited by the mayor. We have been promised, assured, and welcomed with respect to cooperation by every level of law enforcement, state, federal, and local. And we'll participate in that vein. We don't expect any problems.
Mr. Attorney General, on the topic of gun violence, a man was arrested early this morning outside the home of Justice Brett Kavanaugh in Maryland with a gun and a knife, threatening to do harm to the justice. What is your reaction to this?
So this kind of behavior is obviously behavior that we will not tolerate. Threats of violence and actual violence against the justices, of course, strike at the heart of our democracy, and we will do everything we can to prevent them and to hold people who do them accountable. For that reason, last month, I accelerated the protection of all the justices' residences 24/7. Also last month, I met with the marshal of the court. I convened a meeting with her, as well as with the deputy director of the FBI, with the director of the Marshals Service, and with our own law enforcement, our own prosecutors, to ensure every degree of protection available as possible. Just yesterday, I met with Judge Salas and Judge Sullivan on the Judicial Security Committee of the Judicial Conference, and assured them of our complete support for their efforts with respect to judicial security. Mike?
General, when will this group be on the ground in Uvalde? And there's been some indication that at least some police officials, including the school police chief, have been somewhat uncooperative in the investigations that are already proceeding. What is the process for this team to gather information from people who may not cooperate in investigations? And is there any kind of compulsory process?
So the team is already working, and they will be on the ground as necessary, but they have already begun their work. And as I said, we expect voluntary cooperation from everybody at every level, and we have been promised that cooperation.
Is it possible that there will be a criminal referral at the end of the review?
So this is not a criminal investigation. This is an after-action critical incident review, which we have done in the past, which we did in San Bernardino, and which was done in the Pulse nightclub. This is not a criminal review.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.